Hello, I'm here with Jim Dean. Hey, Jim.
Hey, Mark, how are you?
Doing well. I just want to ask you a few questions about the Sanders campaign, which you've been.
Sure.
How long have you been on the campaign trail?
Well, I've been on it ever since we endorsed in one way or another.
That
Not
was late
necessarily.
2015.
No, it was actually.
December 2.
Yeah, I'm sorry. In December of 2015. You're right. You're correct. I getting all my dates wrong these days, and yeah, we took a little bit of a break over the holidays, but after that it was Iowa and then New Hampshire and a few other places. So it's a little bit of the campaign trail, but it's really about mobilizing our members more than anything else. I mean, we've been trying to raise money. We've been doing a lot of work on media, but we do have 1 million members around the country who are really fired up about this. So whether it's we're running a national phone bank or trying to plug members into volunteer spots in different states, that's a lot of that we're doing, and that comes out of the office in Burlington and around the country.
So, for people that don't know, you put it to a vote of your members, Democracy
Yeah.
for America, and it was overwhelmingly pro-Bernie, right?
Yeah, very much so. 87.5%, I believe. So it was pretty much of a foregone conclusion, and which we were totally ready to roll with. And we sent out an email shortly afterwards, and we're going to run a 100% positive campaign, which we've done. And we'll support the nominee, which will be Bernie. And I take very much of a long view on this, as I mentioned earlier with the canvassers. I mean, we are about building up delegates, and I think that he is going to go all the way to the convention, and certainly is capable of either getting ahead in delegate counts or keeping it close enough so that by the time we get to some of these final states like winner take all California, we're going to be in good shape. So there's a definite incredible pathway to victory here, which we're very excited about.
Which isn't the message you're hearing if you listen to the press, the mainstream press. I think has already kind of say it's very unlikely that he can continue to go, right?
Well, that's the mainstream press whose average viewership is well into its 60s, and I can say that because I am well into my 60s, or beginning to get well into my 60s. And look, I don't watch television anymore. Once in a while I hear this stuff. But that's not what's going on in the ground. I don't want to say it's an alternate reality, but there's just a huge gap between what's going on in from a media that's largely Washington-centric and around this country. And it's very clear that the electorate is not happy about the way the political process has gone, is not happy about the fact that big business basically controls it, as well as our economic policy. And considering that 99% of Americans haven't had a raise in 30 years, people feel it. So they want something done, and here's somebody, along comes a candidate who's been about that and nothing else for his entire thing in public life. Look, he could have had chairmanships in the Senate. He could have gotten plum committee assignments that allow him to raise money. That's not what he is. So he's the real deal.
Which some people are beating him up for. They're saying he doesn't evolve. He's the same. I mean, when you point out that he's been consistent, I hear from other people that are fellow liberals saying that's a problem because he doesn't evolve. He's on the same message the whole time. I don't personally share that opinion, but clearly neither do you.
Well, what I would point out is he has recognized a serious problem that has just done nothing but grow over 40 years. And he has evolved along with that to recognize it even more and get more people involved. And not, for example, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is basically a gigantic corporate subsidy, which the Democrats were ready to go vote for, and many of them did, including my Congressman Jim Himes in Connecticut, which was terrible. Bernie Sanders put together a legislative coalition that effectively delayed it long enough to put this back on the ropes in terms of having to debate it. That coalition consisted of a lot of Republicans, including some Tea Party Republicans. So you could say he doesn't involve, but as far as I'm concerned, that sounds to me like a legislature who knows how to get some stuff done in D.C. And we need that.
The other knock against him that you hear from people is that he won't be able to accomplish things in D.C. What do you say to those people? I mean, you just gave an example of why you don't think that's the case, but can you elaborate on why you think he would be a good leader, a good
Well, I would just paraphrase some of the things that Senator Sanders has said himself. He says, look, I mean, this campaign is a vehicle for something that is much larger and much more important, which is resolving the problems that are related to economic inequality, racial justice, climate change, what we're doing to young people with student debt, all of these things. But it's going to be up to everybody to get that done. When I get to be president, as he said, I'm paraphrasing here, I'm not going to just wave a wand and get this done, particularly with the way these people are in Washington and the way they are as in terms of being beholden to big business. It's going to be on you to do that. And what I take out of this actually is a different kind of governance where we have a president who takes his case to the people. And that's exactly the only way you can govern in Washington right now, and it's not new. One person who used to do that rather effectively was Ronald Reagan, and he put the fear of God into a bunch of elected officials who weren't getting much done, and they got some stuff done which I might not like and you might not like, but it was very effective. So there's no reason Bernie Sanders can't govern that way at all.
Right. You mentioned racial justice as being one of the pillars of his platform. I think he's still polling below Hillary with regard to African American voters, even though he's gotten some very high profile. I mean, Killer Mike has been 24/7. Cornel West.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a bunch of guys that are kind of getting on board. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, a bunch of people that are prominent. Coates, others. Is he making up that margin? I haven't looked at the polling data. Is he getting closer in some of those?
Sure, and there are a couple of things that are related to this. One is name recognition. Clinton is a household name. Sanders is not, particularly in this constituency. Number two happens to be the nature of any constituency. There's no such thing as a monolithic voting bloc. For example, in Chicago, and the race for mayor, most of African American constituents over the age of 45 voted for the current mayor. Most of them under the age of 45 voted for the insurgent campaign of Chuy Garcia. And we've seen a lot of this present in some way or another throughout this campaign. But no question, he has to come from a different situation in name recognition, and that's a campaign that he's going to run throughout his entire rest of his public service life. It's a campaign he'll run when he's president, because this is always going to be a work in progress, and we have to approach it that way to correct some of these injustices, to correct the issues that we have, police departments, and the fact that communities like Flint are being thrown under the bus. So I think he takes not necessarily a long view, but a view that he's in this for the long haul, and I think that's going to serve him well among these constituents as well as others.
Yeah, I think people really appreciated the way he handled, when the first situation, the Black Lives Matter kind of movement kind of pushed itself into his campaign. I think I was concerned that he might not handle it gracefully, but he embraced it and kind of took advantage of that fact to have that conversation. I think a lot of people that actually sit back and look at it, the two scenarios side by side, as you're seeing on the internet now, people showing Hillary kind of interacting with that constituency and Bernie interacting with that constituency, and much different in the way that they're approaching those. And I just think it's a matter of getting it so that the voters actually see that.
Yeah, no, I think that's very much true, and I think that goes with kind of the kind of person he is. And I won't say that I know him well, but I've certainly, our office is in Vermont. He represents Vermont, and both himself and his staff are folks that we run into. But if nothing else, Bernie Sanders is a lifelong learner, and he knows that whatever he did 40 years ago, it doesn't necessarily count unless he's still doing the same thing and learning how to do it better 40 years later. So, we've had candidates who have talked about their history on racial justice as if that was good enough, and I think he understood very quickly that it wasn't, and he understands the depth of the crisis to begin with. So. I think we've got a good candidate for this, and again, I think we have a good candidate who is not going to let political expediency get in the way of doing something about the fact that young black folks are getting shot in the street every single day all over this country.
Yeah. I think Joe Trippi, who managed your brother's campaign, had a quote several months ago talking about the Sanders campaign. I think he said that one of his concerns, I might be paraphrasing this incorrectly, but it was that people become more pragmatic as these things go on, as the evolution of the caucuses and the primaries, and I think people might start to look more at not who we want aspirationally, but who we think can beat Trump. And I'm just curious to know how you think this is going to play out over the next several months. I know polling shows him doing better against Trump than Hillary, but it seems like the spirit of the campaign is changing. Well, now it's more, we have to defeat Trump. And I'm just wondering if that could shift things at all in your mind.
Well, I don't think it will, actually. I think, we have to have an answer to the fact that politics has not been very responsive, and the political process has not been responsive to a whole lot of people in this country, like 99% of them. And really, Senator Sanders is that answer. He is the person that is committed enough, and everybody knows is committed enough, so that we can get things done. I think that is what is at the top of the mind of most voters. I know that this is a year that voters are not interested in more of the same, and that's a gamble. And voters aren't known for gambling, but I think we're seeing right now in both the Democratic side and the Republican side that the voters are willing to gamble. And in the case of Senator Sanders, I think he has the right combination of experience, but also a will to bring that around. And I think those polling numbers don't hurt either. I mean, it's very clear that an electorate that wants things done differently, it doesn't surprise me that he would be viewed as the Democratic candidate that would be best suited to defeat any of the Republican candidates.
Let's talk about Michigan specifically. He's, according to 538.com, they say that I think Hillary has a 99.5% chance of winning Michigan based on the last 15 polls that have come out. What's your sense, given the polling numbers that you've seen, or the spirit that you've been now traveling in Michigan for 24 hours? Do you think that there's actually a shot here?
Yeah, I first, a lot of the poll stuff I've seen is actually dated, and to the point where here we are in the last week of an election, and the campaign is obviously ramped up, and there's a debate, and people are really starting to pay attention, and supposed to paying attention to Super Tuesday and some of these other things. So I think that makes us. I think that gets a lot more people out for Bernie. The other thing is, I think this is going to be much more competitive anyway, simply because now that people are really thinking about what their choices are here, they know they have a chance to send a message to the rest of this country about we really mean business, about getting some change done. And that vehicle for that is the campaign of Bernie Sanders. So I do, I'm not a prognosticator. I'm not going to tell you who's going to win or who's going to lose. What I do know is we're going to pick up a lot of delegates out of this thing, and I think we have a very good shot at winning. And certainly what I've seen of these canvases, and frankly, even phone banks, and certainly my personal experience is only anecdotal, but usually I get on a phone bank and I get a little bit for both candidates. I have to say I was pretty surprised yesterday to see just about everybody I spoke to who I got on the phone yesterday was all in for Bernie. And that was an eye-opener. So I think we've got some stuff going for us going into Tuesday.
Yeah. Speaking of anecdotal evidence, I remember your brother coming through Ypsilanti, which is the small town here outside of Ann Arbor where we're located now on the border. When I saw your brother come through, there were about 50 people in the park. It was a great event. I got to talk to him. It was wonderful.
Yeah.
When Bernie came through, what is this? 12 years later,
Yeah.
It was 9,500 that just filled up the Eastern Michigan Convocation Center in that same little town. And now he's coming through U of M, and I'm assuming they'll have more than 10,000 people there tomorrow. It's amazing how, and that wasn't meant to be a knock against your brother.
No,
He
no,
can only
no.
draw 50 people.
Yeah.
When I saw Clinton speaking at U of M the day before the primary, I think, Bill Clinton, there were probably 600 or 700 people on the campus. I mean, there's a feeling of some huge change, and a lot of people in those audiences are young. So you would hope that this is going to translate to something bigger than just Bernie, kind of in line with the work you're doing through Democracy for America, kind of the down ticket kind of people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how is this affecting politics? How is this campaign affecting the bigger picture?
Well, I think it in a very positive way, because a lot of candidates who were very quick to support Hillary, and we don't, that's Hillary, who they're supporting in the presidential primary is not a litmus test for us. We're about candidates who are being supported by our members, who are about economic inequality, doing something about that, and the issues that the campaign is about. But what we've seen is a lot of candidates who supported Clinton early, I think, are having second thoughts about doing that. They know where the passion is right now, and certainly Lucy Flores, who's running for Congress in Nevada, Pramila Jayapal, who's running for Congress in Washington State. These are all folks who were not given much of a chance early enough, and now are very competitive in their primaries. And I think part of that alignment and support of Bernie Sanders has been very, very helpful. Zephyr Teachout, who we're going to be supporting, and we're going to be announcing that, and we just announced that this week, is another example of somebody who has a very, very good shot of winning her seat in Congress in what is a swing district in New York State, over in part because she's advocating for these issues. Again, people want something new, and again, they don't. Their idea of something new. Most Americans' idea of something new and different isn't the kind of sort of Euro-fascist thing that Trump offers. It's actually governance, and it's actually about somebody who can really shake things up in Washington and other centers of power. So it's starting to affect the down ticket stuff, and I think that's only going to build.
I want to stay positive, but you mentioned Trump a few times now. What do you think the future is for the Republican Party? I mean, this is a party that you've studied for years. I mean, you've been against them kind of with what you've built in DFA. What's the future for the Republicans?
Well, the first thing we need to talk about is how they got here. They created this, okay? And that I just want everyone to make sure, and I tell this to so-called moderate Republicans back on East who don't like Trump. This got created. It started with the famous speech by Reagan in Philadelphia, Mississippi, using the sort of code word stuff about states' rights. And they have since been going after all these issues that primarily play into race. And they've tried to be too cute by half, and now they have somebody who isn't, and they deserve that. And they're going to have to live with that for a long time. And they're going to have to spend a lot of time redefining themselves. And it's very clear that their base has shrunk, by the way, and it's very clear that Trump's base is a part of that base. So, they're looking at basic, irrelevancy in a lot of ways. Unless they pull a rabbit out of the hat and one of their folks wins in the presidency, I don't see how. I frankly see this as a pretty big sweep for Democrats, no matter who the nominee is, and I see the Republicans not going off into the wilderness. We need parties. In fact, we need more than two parties, to be very clear about this. But I think usually parties don't come well out of the ashes unless they're willing to go through that kind of soul searching and kind of break up some of those paradigms, and particularly their dependency on big business. And so they have a lot to do before they get relevant and back relevant with the voters.
Yeah. And how about for the Democrats? What would you foresee? I mean, you mentioned that there could be very well be a sweep because of what we're seeing in the Republican Party, the immolation, destruction of the Republican Party. What do you see kind of going forward? More candidates kind of risking things and kind of going more, I'll say more left, or seeing more candidates that are kind of in the model of the DFA kind of model?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I should say is that I see as a possibility of a clean sweep if the Democrats don't snatch defeat from the jaws of victory by trying to get too cute by half with their own issues involving big business, Wall Street, Goldman Sachs, and trying to gut Dodd-Frank reforms and other reforms in the system. This party is either the party of reform or we're going to be going home fairly soon as well. So I don't want to. I didn't want to sort of hold that out as something that all we have to do is show up. We got to do a lot more than that. So in the end, though, if we can prevail, and we are committed to those reforms, you're going to see candidates, and particularly coverage of candidates, get in line with the voters who don't care about parties, number one, and frankly don't live in the paradigm of left, right, center, left, center, right. They want stuff done. They want reforms done. They want health care for everybody. They want out from the underneath of big business and the market, whatever marketplace they're in, whether it's media, whether it's health insurance, whether it's financial services. Almost all of these things are controlled by just a few companies who have 100% pricing power. They want out of that. The same way we've been down this road before during the trusts and the robber barons. That's exactly where we are, maybe even worse now. So if we're offering candidates that are willing to risk it and go up against these people and stand up to big business the way that Bernie has, and stand up for racial justice the way that Bernie has, then we're going to be okay as a party. And if we're a party that's willing to openly compete for the best ideas, the best practices, and the best people, we're going to be okay. But if we're the party that keeps playing to this paradigm that voters don't care about anymore, we're going to go into the tank just as much as the Republicans are.
I won't keep you too much longer, I promise. You mentioned your brother out there. He's already endorsed Hillary, quite a while ago. Mm-hmm. Have you and he had discussions about your choices, and have you tried to bring him over to the right side?
We haven't. We did speak with him actually before we started to poll our members. We could game it out, and we did. We want to be clear, and as we have been publicly, that we're going to run a 100% positive campaign. We're going to support the nominee, which I believe will be Bernie Sanders. He may have a different view of that, but that's okay. And he, in turn, we both said things that either would disagree with, but he has been fairly, I think, fair-minded, at least talking about the issues that Senator Sanders is advocating for. And he's been very clear that this has to be integral part of the Democratic agenda going forward, no matter who the nominee is. So in that respect, I think we're okay. Look, it's a campaign, it's competitive, and that's likely to spill over between Howard and I. But honestly, For the other stuff that we have to deal and the other parts of our lives, I don't really get too concerned about whether that's going to be a real problem or not. It won't be.
What do you think about the controversy about the DNC and them picking sides or choosing sides? Do you get a sense of, or is there anything you can say on the record?
Listen, Howard does not say stuff on the record about the DNC. I mean, he used to be the chair of that.
Right.
They ran a 50-state strategy. That thing was terrific. I'd like to see them do that again.
Yeah, he did great work with the DNC.
And I think it would be helpful if they adopted that posture, again, that profile, and in fact put much more of themselves into that as opposed to whatever it is that they're doing. I would say that just as it is a problem when a county party chair decides to be the county chair for any campaign in a primary, they should do a little bit more to avoid that conflict of interest. I mean, Tulsi Gabbard, one of the big things about this is the fact that she resigned her position as vice chair to avoid that conflict of interest. I mean, that's what people expect. That's the kind of integrity that the DNC should be about. And look, let's be honest, that's not what we've got going right now. And I think there's some changes afoot no matter what happens. And we would certainly like to push that as far as as much as we can. But that's a discussion or a battle that'll happen after the election. Right now, we got to be all in and get this done first.
Okay. One last thing. You've been in Michigan for 24 hours or so now. You've traveled through. You're going to Flint next. We're up north, I think. Talking to Michiganders, what's your sense as to why people will vote for Bernie? What's the message? If you can, if there is such a thing as a single message per state, what do you think kind of encapsulates what we're dealing with now in Michigan, and how will Bernie be the best choice for us?
I think that there's a sense that we need to step out of the normal paradigm of politics in terms of political leader, the more normal paradigm of political leadership to really reform the system. And certainly Michiganders have lived firsthand with this. And I might add, we've done a couple of trainings here. And when I was out here, I think it was 3 years ago, it was the same thing. The people's right to work state, employee rights being taken away, consumer rights being taken away, a legislature that usurps the power of the people, a week after they vote down this emergency manager. You've got a situation here under this governor who's just, I don't even know how the guys like this can be in office. But the fact of the matter is, I think the overwhelming sense here that I get is we've got to do something. And they have a vehicle to do that with, somebody who is out of the paradigm of political leadership, but knows it well enough and has been in it well enough to get something done and do things a little bit differently, and frankly scare the pants off of even some of the Democrats who have let this stuff go on.
Right. I know I said that was the last question, but speaking of scaring people's pants off, what happens if somebody jumps into the race? I heard rumors the other day that Romney might be envisioning an office somewhere. We talk about Bloomberg all the time. How would this kind of change things up, or would they?
Well, it might change things up. I thought Senator Sanders' response to the idea of Bloomberg getting in the race was great. He says, all right, that means that instead of running against one billionaire, I'll be running against two of them, and I'd be fine with that. And the contrast, of course, could not be greater. But I think we also have to be realistic, even with somebody who is experienced at this as Romney is, and for either one. You're looking at we're late in the game right now, and you're looking at a situation where people have to recognize, in the Democratic side at least, that this is about an electorate that wants something new and wants the battle of ideas that's going on right now, and isn't looking at who a bunch of people in Washington think are electable or not, because what they think actually doesn't matter right now. And the polling not only bears that out, but a lot of other parts of this campaign bear it out. So, look, anybody can run for office. I'd never discourage anybody from running for office. But as time goes on, is going to make less and less of an impact.
Yeah, while I am terrified of the prospect of a Trump-Sanders campaign and having the possibility that Trump could go into office, I think maybe that's the kind of, we need to confront that duality. It would be a referendum on the future of the United States if it came down to that.
Yeah, I would welcome that, actually, because it's time to fish or cut bait. And it would make it would send a message to the voters that it's time to either decide if we're going to take control of this country or aren't we? Because that's a problem, too. So hopefully we'll get a little bit more engagement in this cycle.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for the time. I really appreciate it.
Mark, I appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
Sure. See you.